Cop pulls over a car, but when the driver rolls down his window, his life changes forever. Michael Patterson is a state trooper. He loves his job. Throughout his career, he has performed thousands of traffic stops. When he sees a driver doing something they shouldn't be doing on the road, he pulls over the vehicle and in most cases he'll write them a ticket. Most of the tickets he writes are for speeding, but there was one day that he pulled over a vehicle for the tint on the windows. Every state has laws regarding the level of tint a vehicle can have. While Michael was patrolling the Kingwood Township Highway on a summer day in June, he noticed a white BMW in the lane next to him. It wasn't the way the driver was driving or their speed that caught Michael's attention, it was the tint on the windows. The driver's tint was well beyond the legal limit. Michael wondered how the driver was even able to see out of such dark windows. Michael had to pull the car over to prevent the driver or somebody else on the road from being injured if the tint impaired the driver's ability to see. When Michael saw the dark tint on the car, he pulled back so he could get behind the vehicle. He turned on his lights and siren to pull the car over. Michael took pride in the type of police officer he was. He was often friendly with the people he pulled over, even though they were breaking the law. He could have been like other officers and thrown his weight around, but he chose not to. When he pulled the car over, the driver seemed a bit annoyed about it. He knew that he hadn't been speeding, and when Michael informed him that he was being pulled over because of his window tint, he felt a bit silly. The driver should have known better than to have tint so dark because, well, he was a police officer himself. He was a police officer for 30 years before he retired. He loved his job, and being a cop was something that made him proud. Being pulled over for illegal tint, that wasn't the former officer's finest moment. When the former officer was told his tint was too dark, he didn't put up any fight. After being informed that it was too dark, he understood it needed to be fixed. Rather than getting angry, he decided to speak to the person who put the tint on the windows in the first place. When Michael found out that the driver was a former officer, the two men started talking about the job. In only a few minutes, these two men bonded, and the interaction was caught on Michael's body cam. It was also captured on the camera on the front of Michael's car. Michael and the driver, Matthew Bailey, they were learning that they had a lot in common. While talking, Michael learned that Matthew worked as a police officer in another city, not too far away. The two men began sharing stories of life on the job. They were talking about the crazy things that they had seen, and when Matthew told Michael where he worked, Michael was surprised. Turned out Matthew was a police officer in the city where Michael grew up and where his mother still resided, Piscataway. Matthew asked Michael when he was born, and Michael told him that he was born in 1991. When Matthew heard this, he wanted to get more information. He remembered an incident that took place close to 30 years earlier, and he had a feeling Michael may have had something to do with that incident. When Michael told Matthew that he was born October 5, 1991, Matthew asked what street he grew up on. Michael was wondering what all the questions were about, and he told Matthew he grew up on Poe Place. Matthew was about to shock the officer. At that time, Matthew was still a rookie with only 4 years with a badge under his belt. He received a call to Poe Place while on patrol. He was told that a young woman named Karen was in labor, and she might not be able to wait for the ambulance. When Matthew arrived, he knew he had to deliver the woman's baby. Most officers go their entire career without delivering a baby. Matthew had to do it after just 4 years on the job. The baby Matthew delivered that day was, you guessed it, Officer Michael. Growing up, Michael heard the stories about how a police officer delivered him into the world, and it made him proud. It was part of the reason that he wanted to become a police officer himself. Michael had no idea who the officer was that delivered him, and he couldn't believe he had just pulled him over. After finding out that Matthew was the guy who brought him into the world, Michael didn't have the heart to give him a ticket. He trusted that Matthew would handle the tint on his own. He was just thrilled to meet the officer who helped deliver him. This cop pulled over a car, but when the driver rolled down his window, his life changed forever.